For this tutorial, you're gonna need yarn, a hook, stitch markers, and also a measuring tape and some scissors. I used Alize microfiber acrylic yarn. It's a weight too thin yarn, but you can use whatever yarn you would like. So to start, we're going to make a slip knot. And then after the slip knot, we are going to chain one. And then we're going to do our first lover's knot. So you're just going to pull the yarn up, and you can make it as long or as short as you want. And then you're going to yarn over and pull through the loop. And then you're gonna have 3 pieces of yarn, and you're gonna go under that first one. And then you're gonna yarn over and go through that first one again. And now you should have 2. And then you're gonna yarn over and pull through all 2, kind of creating a single crochet. Okay, so we're going to do that 3 more times for a total of 4 lover's knots. Okay, so I finished my 4 lover's knots, and you're going to find the first single crochet that you did, and you're just going to put your hook in there, and then you're going to make a single crochet. I'm going to add a stitch marker in the single crochet next to where we just left off, so I know that that's going to be my tip. To begin the next row, we are going to make 3 lover's knots. Once we are done with the 3 lover's knots, we are going to flip our work. And in between each of the long chains, there's going to be a knot. So we're going to go into the knot, and we are going to do a single crochet. And then we are going to do 3 more lover's knots, and then put a single crochet into the last knot to finish off this row. Okay, and now we are done with row 2, and you'll see the triangle starting to form. Now starting from here, it's going to be a little bit different. We are just going to do 1 lover's knot, flip our work, and do a single crochet into that very first knot. Okay, and that is going to lead us into our next row. So to start every row, we're going to do 3 lover's knots and then flip our work. After you flip your work, you're going to put 1 single crochet into that first knot. And since we have more knots in between the beginning and the end, we are going to do 2 lover's knots and then go into that next knot with a single crochet. Make sure you're going into knots that only have 2 long chains connected to them. So then we are at the end of our row, and at the end of every row, we're going to do 3 lover's knots and then do a single crochet in the last knot. Okay, and this is what it should look like now. Your triangle is starting to get bigger, and then remember you have to end off the row by doing 1 lover's knot, flipping your work, and doing a single crochet into that first knot. And then from there, it's basically going to be the same pattern. You're going to start off by doing 3 lover's knots, and then doing a single crochet into the next knot. And then in between the beginning 3 and the end 3, you're only going to do 2 lovers knots. And now we're coming up to the last knot, so we're going to end with 3 lovers knots and do a single crochet into the last knot. And now I'm just doing my 1 lover's knot, flipping my work and doing 1 single crochet into the first knot. And then we will begin our next row the same exact way. Start with 3, and then in between it's going to be 2 lovers knots, and then you're going to end with 3 lovers knots. So you're going to keep repeating that until you get the width that you want. To get my neck hole measurement, I measured from one shoulder to the other shoulder. I wanted my neck hole to be a little bit wider though, so I can wear it off the shoulder, but you can make yours as small or as big as you want. For my neck hole, I wanted it to be 12 inches. I already placed my stitch markers, but what I did was find the midpoint of my triangle, and then I placed a stitch marker 6 inches to the right of that midpoint and 6 inches to the left of that midpoint, which gave me 12 inches in total. I counted the stitches on the left side of the marker and the right side of the marker to make sure they were the same, and then I adjusted accordingly to make sure that they were even. So the second half of your poncho is going to be pretty similar, except this side we're going to be doing decreases. To start the row, we're going to do 1 lover's knot and 1 single crochet into that first knot. And then we are going to do 2 lover's knots and go into that second knot with a single crochet. And you're just going to keep repeating this, doing 2 lover's knots and then 1 single crochet in the next knot until you reach your first stitch marker. Now we're going to put a single crochet in our first stitch marker, and we are going to do our second half of our neck. So we are going to count the amount of lover's knots in between our 2 stitch markers, and you're just going to make that same amount of lover's knots like a chain, like a long chain. And you're going to attach it on the other side where the second stitch marker is with a single crochet. So I finished my lover's knot chain, and I'm going to go into the second stitch marker and do a single crochet. And from here, you're basically going to repeat the same pattern that you repeated in the beginning. So you're going to do 2 lover's knots, and then you're going to go into that next knot with a single crochet up until you get to the end. So remember that we are decreasing now, so you're gonna have one more knot left at the end, but you're not going to put anything into it. At this point, I would double check my neck hole and maybe try it on to see if that's the size that you want. If not, you can go back and fix it. But I'm just going to start the next row. So I'm gonna do 1 lover's knot, and then I'm going to flip my work and do a single crochet into that first knot. So now that we're decreasing, we're no longer starting and ending each row with 3 lover's knots, we're starting with 2 lover's knots. So you're gonna do 2 lover's knots, and then you're gonna go into the next knot with a single crochet. And you're gonna basically repeat this pattern up until you get to the other side. So it's gonna be 2 lover's knots, single crochet in the next knot, 2 lover knots, 1 single crochet into the next knot. So when we get to the neck chain, we are going to do 2 lover's knots, and into that first knot, we are going to do 1 single crochet. And then it's basically going to be a repeat. So you're going to do 2 lover's knots. You're going to skip 1 knot and go into the second knot. Okay, so we're coming up to the end of the row, and here's just a close-up so you can get a better look. So we're going to finish it off by doing 2 of our lover's knots and then 1 single crochet into that last knot. So to start the next row, we are going to do 1 lover's knot. We are going to flip our work and then do 1 single crochet into the very first knot. And then after that, to go into the next row, it's going to be 2 lover's knots and then 1 single crochet into the next knot, 2 lover's knots, 1 single crochet into the next knot. And this is just going to be your repeating pattern for the rest of the poncho. So as you're working, you'll be able to see that it is starting to decrease on the other side. This is what it should be looking like. And again, you're going to just keep repeating that same pattern until you get to a tip eventually, like the first side. I went ahead and I cut my fringes already, but I used a ruler to cut mine and I made them all 6 inches long. You're gonna need quite a few, so it might be a little bit time consuming. Once your fringe is cut, you can begin attaching. I used 3 strands and I'm going to fold the yarn in half. Then I insert my hook into the poncho and I bring the strands through, and it's gonna kind of create a loop. And then I'm just going to check the ends of the yarn and kind of try to make them even as much as possible. It doesn't have to be perfect though, because you can go in and fix it later. And then I'm just going to bring the yarn through that hoop and I'm going to pull tight. You're just going to keep repeating this in each of the spaces around the poncho. It's honestly so time consuming, but the finished product is so worth it. Alrighty, and the poncho is done. It is so cute. There's so many different ways to wear it. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments. Thank you.